All right, welcome everyone to another Mere Mortals conversation. Today, I have the co-founder of Rocketshoes, which is a decentralized digital asset platform, educational technologist, and owner of a way more sensible name than myself. It's Kieran Nolan. Welcome,
Hi.
Kieran.
Thanks for
That's
having me.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, I gotta say, man, I love the name. It's a great name, very similar to mine, but just much more sensible. You can produce it, pronounce it easily. Like you see it, and you're like, that's a Kieran right there.
Kind of. Everyone spells it
Oh,
wrong all
really?
the
What
time.
do
So
they
yeah,
go? Do they say it
everything
wrong as
wrong.
well?
Yeah. So I've had. Oh, it's actually pronounced Kieran because it's an Irish name, and it's
Ah,
actually has
gotcha.
what's called a fodder over the A, which makes it an O, which is it's just so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
confusing. So, and it's actually there's no K in Gaelic, so it's with a C. So,
Gotcha,
it's
gotcha.
like-
Yeah.
so nobody ever spells it right. So I'm like, write whatever you want. I don't care. I give up.
For sure. I'm pretty similar. I'm like, if you want to pronounce it like Kyrin, Kyron, Kyran, like I'll just go with it.
Just go for
It's all
it.
good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I first came across you when you actually had Dave Jones on the IPFS podcast. I forgot to mention that in the bio as well. You're the host or one of the hosts of the IPFS podcast, and we'll get into that. But I really wanted to start with the education and Wooranna Park Primary School, which is in Dandenong
Wooranna.
in
You gotta say
Wooranna.
it through your nose.
Wooranna. Yeah, I'm losing
Yeah,
my Aussie accent.
yeah.
Um, do you want to just give us like a little bit of a brief history of Wooranna and your, I guess, involvement with them? Because that'll set the scene nicely for us.
Yeah. So, oh God, 8 years ago now, I started at the school. So, historically, I've kind of worked in every type of educational institution, from sort of K to 12. So, like Catholic ed, and then sort of moving into K to 12 private, and now this school's a department or a public school. Um, and they all sort of have their pros and cons, I suppose. But
Yeah,
starting
I think I'll
at
ask you a question or two about that a little bit later.
sure, yeah. Um, but yeah, the starting at the school, we just dived into a whole bunch of cool tech stuff. So basically, like someone tweeted me actually, um, that someone was like the print was looking for a computer geek, quote unquote. And I thought it was just hilarious. I'm like, what is this school? I got to check it out. So went, checked it out, had a meeting with him. We hit it off, and he took me for the tour of the school. And there was no like traditional classrooms. It was all like open learning spaces and what they called SLPs or stimulated learning platforms, which are basically like for the year 2 unit, instead of like having kids sitting in rows and someone sort of standing at the front of the room, they've got a massive dragon boat. So like the philosophy was like, what if Walt Disney built a school? And that's kind of what it is. It's like this exciting spaces that the kids get to interact in and sort of learn all this amazing stuff. And hit it off with him, started at the school, and kind of went on a bit of a BTC journey with that. So I think it was around 2014. Like in my previous school, I had run a thing with a group of year 10s and the e-learning coordinator, that we called like a bit gigs model, where the kids would sort of upskill themselves and get paid in Bitcoin online, because it wasn't like real money at the time. We were like, whatevs, like, you can kind of got around everything. Then came to Melbourne. I was like, look, there's this cool like currency online. Do you want to be Australia's first quote unquote Bitcoin school? And the principal being, he's 81 this year. So I think at the time, how old he was, in his 70s. He was like, yeah, sure. And then like, what does that mean? So we ended up sending away to there's a university in London and one in Greece. Actually, both had affiliations with Andreas Antonopoulos, who's a famous podcaster and
Yeah.
really cool dude. But he, I'm assuming it was him, actually spun it up so they could send us enough BTC to buy some Raspberry Pis for our school, just to demonstrate that a university to a primary school could, like no middleman, just buy some computers for school children, sort of thing. And that kind of set off the business manager at the time. She was like, "What is this? Does the department know what?" And I was just like, "Oh my god, it's $30. Like, who cares?"
Yeah, yeah.
we weren't allowed to spend that money, and it ended up sort of sitting there, and we had to keep asking the department, obviously going up in value. And by the time, like, to Ray, the principal's credit, he kept asking the department, like, this is ridiculous. Why can't we spend this money to buy computers for school children? Like, just because you don't understand what it is, like, these kids are sort of missing out, you know? Anyway, by the time that we got the approval, we had a philanthropist come through to the school, a guy by the name of Andrew from the States, who had been, unbeknownst to me, had been to 250 schools across America, sort of donating here and there. And he was, you know, BTC 1.0, and kind of escaped just before Trump got in, I think, and then came to Australia. And I was volunteering at the blockchain center at the time. And someone said, go check out Kieran's school. So he did, and spent the whole day, even stayed like after school for a program I was running after school called Coder Dojo. And yeah, by the end of that, he was like, dude, this is the best school I've ever seen. I was like, oh, thanks, man. And he's like, I want to give you 21 Bitcoins to build that learning space you were talking about out of the shipping containers. So he did. And then kind of the rest was history with that. So we built this amazing student-centric space out of that. And we've done all sorts of cool stuff in between there, but that's kind of an overview of some of the stuff we've done at Wooranna.
Yeah, for sure. So let me get this straight. The bureaucracy actually helped you guys because it it made you keep your Bitcoin in a way for longer than you would have.
well, there was that, and then actually with his donation, we weren't allowed to accept that either. So even with it was such strange wording. So we got a letter from them saying you can spend up to $250 worth Australian for risk of it going up in value. Wrap your head around that. Like, what? It doesn't make any sense. So what we ended up having to do, which was really cool, in hindsight, it was cool. At the time, we were just like frustrated as like, what? It doesn't make any sense. But Andrew actually ended up setting up a fund, and we got the kids to vote on the Ethereum. So kind of Ethereum blockchain, like there's another mechanism so you can do like authenticated voting. But we were like, all right, well, let's kind of flip it to our advantage. And like, you know, I'm not going to have a say, principal's not going to have a say, school council, none of the teachers. Let's let the kids vote on how the funds are allocated. So we did, and they built these amazing spaces based on like what the kids wanted. So to put it in perspective, like the engineering shipping container that we have, which has got like Satoshi's white paper on the wall and some pretty cool computers and stuff, has Mario Game Maker for some reason. So it's like those sort of crazy things, but like, you know, virtual reality and all sorts of cool stuff in there. But I think it was, the bureaucracy ended up being a good thing in the end.
Yeah, the one and only time in enjoy it, savor that moment. Oh, that's funny as. So what? So it sounded like Wooranna was already a pretty unique school in a way, I guess, before you joined. Like the principal was really open-minded and looking to explore all these different things, and then you jumped in. So it's just a primary school, right? So the kids are grade 1 to 7. Is that
prep to 6? Yeah,
prep to 6. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it's changed since I was in a primary school. So so for people listening, that's probably like 6 to 12 years old, something like that.
Yep. Five to 12.
Yep. I wanted to really ask you about how the kids are interacting with the blockchain technologies. So I've watched like a bunch of your videos, listened to, I think thankfully like your podcast, you've only got like 10 episodes, so I could smash them all out, which is really nice. Didn't have to like binge over like, you know, months. It was, I could just binge in a week.
That's just from me being lazy, man.
Hey man, your laziness is appreciated. So I really want to ask, like, you know, I really see, so I've really gotten into blockchain and the crypto stuff in the past 6 months, although like most people, I have my own story of how I bought some, you know, back before it blew up to its current levels, and et cetera, et cetera. But so these kids are really getting into this stuff, you know, right at the start of their, you know, when they're forming their memories, I guess. And, you know, I can't remember anything really past before 4 years old or anything. Are you noticing anything of how they're actually interacting with it? Like any changes with their mentality or their thought patterns or behaviors, anything like that?
For sure. So I suppose before we get into that sort of thing, there's a bit of a sad story with that whole learning space as well. So we had a break-in at the start of the year, and these guys came in and stole everything pretty much out of there. So they literally ripped the doors off the hinges, and like everything's gone. And because it's in shipping containers and not part of the school technically, like the insurance doesn't cover it. So the learning space is pretty much gone. And they came back like a second night and then stole the rest of the stuff. So it's pretty much everything. So it was like a computer I built with the kids. It was a full Ethereum node that, it's not worth anything to anyone really, except for us. They took that. There's actually a photo of me in the age, like with one of the kids who helped build it. They were like, we built it from like old computer parts, but they came in and took it all. So off the back of that, the department's actually written up, this is where the bureaucracy is negative. They've written a policy that not just our school, but no Victorian school now can use shipping containers as classrooms. So problem solved.
No, I'm sorry to hear that,
sad.
Man.
It sucks. It really sucks. So like kind of with that, the learning space is gone. So a lot of the stuff we were doing is kind of gone as well. But I will say they kind of haven't stolen what the kids have already learned in that space. So that's the positive aspect, I suppose. So with that, like we've done all sorts of cool projects. Like I was just saying yesterday to a group in Gladstone, one of the kids actually decided to build his own hardware wallet. This is like a number of years ago. In that space, we had a really good 3D printer, and he found like these like a case you could 3D print online for like a Raspberry Pi Zero. So ended up like ordering one of them, and actually that was paid for with BTC as well. So it was like a refund with some credit that we had. So I'm like, oh, we got like $50. Let's use it and we'll buy that for you. So ended up like building his own hardware wallet, and then we contacted Ledger. So Ledger do hardware wallets as well, and they like just altruistically like sent us a whole bunch and said like keep up the good work sort of thing. So there's like all these little cool projects, and then the kids got to learn how to use like a real hardware wallet off that. It's like all these cool projects sort of came out of that space, like from creating our own cryptocurrency. So we used a Solidity. So the kids built with Solidity, but even before Solidity was a thing, we were building with or before we knew about Solidity, there was another system built off the BTC blockchain. I forget the name of it, but you could actually spin up your own tokens. So we made like our own Wooranna coin, and you can like do all the metrics to it and how many there are. And so we did like 21 million, the same as BTC. Yeah, and it was quite fun. So it was like going from that to coding up our own ones with on the Ethereum blockchain, which now is just unusable with the fees and everything. And then we used Doge. So Doge, before it was huge, like that was my go-to for the kids using stuff, just because you could go, it was worthless and it's like a joke currency. Everybody loves the Doge dog. So it was
kids
like
would love it. It's and there's plenty of it to go around.
That's right. So there's a great website called Doge Explorer where you could spin up wallets and quickly see like what a transaction hash is, what the difference is between a public and private key, and how that interacts, and like send it between each other. And I think that was the best until it like went up in value.
I was just gonna say, have you got like any 8-year-old millionaires running
probably
around?
Like I bought like a bunch and just gave it to all of them. So I hope they retained all the information on how to recover that. So yeah, heaps of cool projects. And we've actually, and off the back of that, so like what we were looking at doing was, it was difficult initially with Andrew coming up. Like we actually wanted to do like sort of didactic, like teacher driven, like classes or courses or a curriculum around blockchain tech, but that's not really the philosophy of the school. So we're kind of going back and forth on like, how do we make it student centric without saying you have to do this at by this time, by that. Like anytime you do that, it doesn't sort of work with the kids, I find anyway. So we try to like sort of use the tech as much as possible to facilitate what they're interested in. So we do these things called, actually, I think they've stopped this year, but historically we've done these things called Enigma missions, where the kids embark on like a journey for up to 3 years on their passion project. So um, they've done everything from feeding homeless people to GMO foods to the problems with Einstein's equation, like crazy stuff, and trying to sort of interject the technology into that to see if it can sort of fit, which I think is much better for the learning because you get more excited about what you're doing, and yeah, they kind of take ownership over it as opposed to saying you have to do this sort of thing. And it was the same, like we started a Cisco class, like when I started at the school. So Cisco is like basically the whole internet runs on Cisco hardware, but you do like Cisco certifications at a tertiary level. So I got my CCNP from Swinburne University, but we ended up going through like the CCNA with one of the kids at school who had or has a really high IQ. I think that was in the Age as well. They did another piece on that. But basically, his mum was just like, "Is there anything he can do, like at a sort of tertiary level, not at a high school level? Because he's already sort of done everything." And I'm like, "Why don't we try some Cisco?" So he did, got the books, was going through the material, building our own networks, and then just organically, like all his friends wanted to start doing it. So he ended up setting up a Cisco class, but because the kids wanted to do it, not because you had to do it, if you get what I mean. So I think that, and that's kind of the philosophy, or has been across the whole school for years. And I think that's hard to replicate because it was really well thought out from students taking ownership of their learning from prep right through. Like a lot of schools will try to implement that, like at year 7 upwards, and the kids have already sort of indoctrinated into waiting for instructions for stuff.
So I was going to ask, I guess, like, do you feel that their understanding of it is deep enough for what they're playing with? Like, because I suppose what I'm saying is, for me, the past 6 months has been almost excruciating in a way of like really trying to be able to, get enough understanding of like how Bitcoin works to be able to trust it, especially with like some serious sums of money and whatnot. With kids, I guess, they don't have the whole money stuff. They're just playing around with Doge. Even if you try to tell them it's worth something, it's probably like, oh, it's a fun token. It's not really, they don't have all the associations like money can do this, money can, you get paid in money, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just wondering, like, how deep do you think is their understanding of the actual tech behind it? Is it better than adults, for example, who are trying to learn it as well?
So, and I think the monetary aspect's better than adults as well. So I think trying to explain blockchain tech to sort of anyone our age and older is near impossible, just because we already have these mindsets about like what money is, how it works, where it comes from. Kids don't have any of that. So kind of like you say, like it doesn't matter. Like they don't have that sort of fear or that centralized those centralized thought patterns of like how things should work. It's infinitely easier. But I will say, like, I think it's not every student would be interested. Not every student would have a deep understanding of like what blockchain is, or the technology behind BTC or any of these cryptos. But some of them do, and there's so many different aspects to it. So, like, for example, we had one student. So we actually built a game with some developers in Sydney a number of years ago that teaches you how to mine Bitcoin, because you can't do it like at school, sort of thing. So there's so many different aspects. There's like, running a node, mining, transactions, users, like all these different elements to the BTC blockchain and other blockchains as well. Where you like to have a deep understanding of just one aspect of it, like mining, is quite difficult. But there's one student who was so persistent that we were kind of just learning about it at school, and then he was going home and mining Ethereum with his dad based on what he did at school, because we couldn't do it at school, sort of thing. It's interesting. So I think it's such a broad subject, that there's aspects for everybody, and nobody's sort of left out if they're interested. But like, I mean, that's not going to be the same for every school. So like most schools will have, one thing that everybody has to do at once. Our school doesn't have that. So it's like, there's some students interested in robotics, some are not, but they kind of get to choose what they want to do. Or environmental studies, it's another aspect, or chess. So it's very different to most schools, but I think that it's better for the kids.
Yeah, well, it's encouraging to see that they're forming that interest without having to, force it on them, which I imagine is so. Like let's see, I was going through school. I graduated in 2009, and so I didn't really have the internet forced upon me, but we weren't also using it that much. Like, I think you said you were in a school where you were trying to go paperless in 2008, was it? Which is like, that's insane. I'm trying to.
We did.
Yeah,
we went totally paperless. Good.
Yeah.
God, man, you've done your research. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I've been listening a bit, and like I'm just thinking, how cool would that be? Just having this next generation of kids, and I suppose like it'll be older. It'll take a while till they're I guess in the age where they can start making decisions with what they want to do with regards to their life in terms of a job or career, or where they want to spend their time and whatnot. But super encouraging that they're just getting into it. Like and as you said, not everyone needs to know how blockchain stuff works. Like I barely know how the internet works, and yet I use it every single day.
That's right. Exactly right. So it's like the kids who are building their own networks. I had such a cool story with that as well. So like the student who was building that initially, like, and got all his friends involved with building these computer networks. We were kind of doing it virtually first through something called Packet Tracer, and then they wanted to like build it in the real world. So we actually gave him like an old server to set up like DCHP and like DNS, and gave them a switch and some wireless access points to get everything sort of connected. The only thing they were missing was like a router, and we didn't have a Sperry for them, like a Cisco router. So they ended up like asking the print. They're like, "Look, we haven't got the funds to buy that now. Maybe sort of down the track." They were so persistent that it was hilarious. Just coincidentally, I had a family friend who had like one of those crypto locker viruses on the computer, and he called me up. I'm like, dude, I got no time. I'm sorry, but if you want, I got a group of smart kids who might be able to get it back for you. So it's literally a group of like 11-year-olds. So he brought it down to the school. They got his data back for him. They got paid. They bought the router and then built the rest of the network. I'm like, awesome. It's so cool. I was like, if I had said, you guys have to go and build a network now, like it would have never happened. It was just because they're excited to do it. And I was like, here's the opportunity, sort of go for it. But it's fascinating, like that sort of learning. This is what I was talking about with the Gladstone guys yesterday. It's so key because they're looking at running a coder dojo. So the same as like we were running at school, but it's so fascinating to see like the difference between like the philosophy for say our school at Wooranna, and then like these private schools that were coming along. So we had like Wesley, which is one of the big ones. We had like people coming from like 2 hours away because there was no other coder dojo at the time, and I was running it on the weekends.
Coder dojo is just a way for kids to learn code, right? So
it's like a communities that people do, volunteers sort of run. So I was running it on a weekend with the guys from the Royal Society in the city. But they didn't have any space for it, so we ended up just running it at our school, sort of thing. But it was started out of Ireland, and they've spread all over the world. But there was not in Victoria, so like, all right, well, we'll just do it at our school. But it's basically learning how to code, or we kind of just made it open, like whatever the kids wanted to do. But it's fascinating to see the kids from the private schools coming along who are literally sitting on their hands waiting for instructions the whole time. Like, dudes, what do you want to do? We can do anything you want. They couldn't do it. And it was an eye-opener for me of just how important the philosophy of learning is versus like, the actual curriculum to stuff. Like the detriment it does to kids to not have that instilled from a young age, and like the passion for learning stuff. It's just so important.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm probably getting way off topic.
no, man. Let's keep going down this route. So, both my parents were high school teachers, and I was telling my dad about this BTC school, like the school on the blockchain sort of thing, and just sort of like relaying some info. And I was saying, I thought it was kind of crazy that you were doing all of this really fascinating. Like, it's unbelievable that you're not, like, the school isn't being promoted more as like a shining example of just the cool shit that's out there. And I was just saying, like, I thought it was fascinating that you were doing this in a public school, because I thought it would be way harder in a public, whereas in a private, I don't know, just the perception for me was it's a private school. They've got sort of their own funds, so they can do what they want. But my dad was saying, having worked in the public sector for, I don't know, 30 plus years, he was saying, no, it's the opposite way. You get a lot more leeway with the public schools than you do with the private. I was just wondering, like, what would be the reason for that? Because it sounds the same that you've noticed.
I did think that up until sort of this year. So yeah, it's interesting. The principal's retired now as of this year, and I think it's all to his credit, all that. So he was basically wasn't afraid to tell the department to get stuff.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it works. And it was kind of the same with the paperless school I was talking about. Like, we had a really cool print. She was awesome. Sort of the same thing with the diocese. Like, she wasn't afraid to say, no, we're doing this. It's important. So it's about leadership, I think. Once that's gone, it's really hard to sort of get it back. And I think having obviously a community is really important as well, but having someone who's really driven with a vision, or a raison d'etre, as they call it, or a reason for being, I think is really important. So yeah, I don't think it matters like what system you're in. There's always detractors, like I said before, like with the private schools. It sounds like you could kind of do more, but the school council and the parents kind of want the same education they had, because they're all like lawyers and doctors and whatever. They want the same education from 50 years ago. They don't understand that world's gone now. You know what I mean? So it's kind of each one, whether it's the diocese or Department of Ed or parents and school council, they all can sort of take away from with it, and probably without realizing, like thinking they're doing the right thing, but taking away from students' engagement and learning. And it just takes someone with a vision to sort of cut through that, I think. And I think like what we're working on at the moment. So I had one of the students from last year, actually, we're building in something called A-Frame. So A-Frame's basically VR for the web. Really cool stuff. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. But Mozilla Hubs has built out a whole SDK on top of that. So you can build these amazing spaces.
What's an SDK? Software development?
Software development kit. So basically it just makes it easy to use. So that was a funny story, actually, just as a side note with that, we were building like these, what I thought were amazing spaces, like just from code. So for example, like a VR space with just like a spinning rocket and that's it, sort of thing. Took us days to get that going. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Caught up with the director of immersive ed over in America. I was like so proud showing him. And he was like, yeah, that's awesome. Have you seen what Mozilla have built on top of that? So like he was contacting me to tell me just coincidentally. I'm like, oh my God, this is next level. So like basically what you can do in these spaces is like what we're doing now, but in VR and everything else you can possibly imagine. But one of the kids who was actually working on that is now working with the Future Schools Alliance to build a virtual school. And I think that maybe down the track might sort of get rid of all the bureaucracy and all the nonsense that we kind of come up against with the physical spaces. So I think that's going to be something to sort of look forward to. And like I've been waiting so long for the tech to kind of get there, and now it's here. So like you don't need a high-end VR headset. You can have one, but it means you can interact with someone on a cheap Chromebook or a phone or whatever, and it's equitable for everyone. We haven't had that up until now, so A-Frame and Mozilla Hubs, check it out.
Yeah, for sure, we'll do. What's like the craziest idea I guess one of the kids has had regarding how to use blockchain and crypto or anything like that? Have they said
Crazy
anything that's
study,
yeah, like just anything that's so out of the box where you're like, I would have never thought of that in a million years.
Yes, actually. So we had just a discussion on it, like this is years ago. And so topical now, but it was actually talking about using blockchain tech to authenticate vaccines. So this is like before
Yeah, way before
any
COVID,
of this
yeah.
stuff. But so like the whole, remember years ago there was that whole debate on like autism and vaccines and whether it contributes or not. So it was one of the kids. It was actually one of the kids at Coda Dojo, like really smart kid. Not from our school. He's from a different school, but yeah, it's super switched on. And he was like, well, if it authenticates all the ingredients like along the line, can't we use that to authenticate like each vaccine that goes into someone and then test it? I'm like, that's brilliant. Absolutely
so
brilliant.
it's like talking on the compound level, right? So, it's got these compounds in it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I was like, that is such a cool idea. So maybe we should be doing that now.
couldn't hurt, hey? That's super cool. That's super cool. It's always funny, like you're hearing like random podcasts or something, and they'll talk about something like vaccine related or whatnot, obviously before COVID, and you're just like, man, that's so prescient.
It's so weird.
So prescient.
I hadn't thought about that till just now, but like, yeah, that so such foresight to be thinking like that.
Yeah. Have you noticed any I don't know, negatives, I guess, with kids interacting with the blockchain so much? Is there anything they're really struggling with, which in terms of like understanding it or even potentially using it in negative ways? Just, kids being kids, there's bullying and stuff like that. Has bullying moved onto the blockchain or anything?
No, I wouldn't say on the blockchain. No, I haven't really had any negative experiences with blockchain tech or any Web3 stuff, but technology in general, for sure. I think that's probably across any school. So, kids doing the wrong thing, bullying online, and even just security and that sort of thing, like, and not thinking things through. But there's a big push, I think, for institutions and schools in particular to kind of look at that and go, oh, technology bad, stop, like you block everything, you can't do anything, as opposed to using it as a tool for learning, right? So it's like you have these schools where you have unlimited access to the internet, blocked access to the internet, and then they're going home to unlimited access. They've never learned how to use it properly in the place where you're meant to be learning things. Like it really irks me. Like it's ridiculous. And you'll see like a lot of schools, techs in particular, like pride themselves on no one being able to get access to anything. It's like, well, great. This is the place where you're meant to be learning that, like to begin with, like what's the point? So I think that needs to change. And I think it is. I think it's shifting, but it's that sort of fear-based approach to not just that, and not just the connectivity, but even just like, screen time. I've noticed that a lot. So it's like teachers will be scared of the kids being in front of the screen for too long or whatever. It's like, well, I remember I was on a show in Sydney. God, what was the name of it? What's the show where the woman stands in the middle and kind of fires questions to the audience?
I don't watch much TV.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Nah, neither. Hence, I didn't know the name. Anyway, we got invited with the kids to go up to that thing, and one of the women at the front, she was like, year 3 teacher, and she's like, "Oh, kids are distracted all day." I go, you can replace the word distracted with engaged. She didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? Like it's just they're engaged, so why not use that to, help them to learn something?
Yeah, and you're insane if you don't think the kids are going to get past this. So I know you were talking about how you were making proxies back in the day when you were in school, and same here. Like proxies, people were going around, selling them or distributing them across, playing Doom or Quake or whatever it was, and yeah, like
Quake,
kids will find
baby.
a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
brilliant games.
Yeah, it's the bomb. Yeah, actually, yeah, we ended up hacking our school server in high school and setting up a Quake server. So that's how I got interested in tech. I was like, it wasn't through any curriculum, I'll tell you that much right now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just through that. So like I became an admin for like 60 kids getting connected to this server. And so like I just I just was forced to learn like what's an IP address, what's a subnet. Like, and that's I got interested in math as well. Like I hated math before that. I'm like, oh my God, it actually has a purpose for
Yeah,
something.
I can use this thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man. I wanted to just before moving on from the schools, just ask about some of the challenges. I think I heard you saying somewhere that one of the hardest bits about COVID, which is funny because like you're such a tech heavy school that you'd think that you'd be like most suited for it, but you were saying it was the actual hardware. Like kids didn't have access to the hardware, so even though
Yeah.
they know how to use so much stuff from school, when they're restricted or locked down at home, they
Yep.
physically didn't have what they needed to actually be able to use their skills, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was probably the first lockdown. So we ended up getting a whole bunch of computers donated, and yeah, we had an abundance by the third lockdown. God, I've lost count. I think we're in lockdown 8 or something now. Um, but yeah, the first one it was like we were so set up for it, and the kids were so good to go with things like Minecraft and like um, Google Classroom and setting up all these systems online for them to connect with. But some families didn't even have an internet connection, so it makes it real difficult. So um, yeah, in hindsight, if you go back and just set up from the beginning and give everyone stuff to begin with, like that would have been awesome. But yeah, it's kind of sad. Like I think that's the positive that's come out of this. Like one is the digital literacy that everyone's been forced, to sort of achieve. And two is like getting students devices that may not have had them in the past. So I think it hasn't all been negative. I think there's been a lot of cool stuff that come out of it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I was almost cheering in a way because, well, I mean, it helps that my life wasn't really affected much. Like I already sort of podcast from home. I don't like big crowds and sporting events, so COVID didn't really hit me hard. But I was sort of cheering in the way where it was like, you hear stuff about like the smog over Santiago in Chile. You can see from the Cerro San Cristobal, which is like the big mountain right next to the city. You go up there and you could actually see out over the city because no one's driving anywhere and stuff like that. The amount of commute time was just drastically cut all over the world, and I can only think that's like a huge benefit to people's like mental health. As bad as COVID is, like maybe the mental health of not being stuck in a car and on the highway in peak hour traffic is maybe just as good.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, all sorts of things. What's just been some of the public perception as well of the kids getting so involved with blockchain, like stuff that the parents don't even understand. I mean, I guess this has happened when the internet was happening as well. There's kids getting access to computers and email and internet before their parents did, but I sort of see like the whole blockchain and Web 3.0 is very similar to the internet and just how massively it's going to change the world. What sort of has been some of the parents' reactions to the kids?
Mostly positive across the board. I think even outside the school, it's been very positive. I think but funnily enough, like the blockchain stuff, I think because we kind of it's not really monetary based as such. It's like looking at the technology of it. And like building things out in like Solidity or whatever. Like actually, there's a really really cool website if you want to learn Solidity called Crypto Zombies. Worth doing. It's fun, and you're like coding out your own zombies sort of thing.
I need to learn some Python first, man. I have no coding.
Well, no, Solidity is way easier. So I reckon,
okay.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's basically the language underneath Ethereum. So you can spin up your own tokens and do all sorts of cool stuff with that. And a lot of it's on testnet, so it doesn't matter. Like you can't stuff anything up, and there's no monetary aspect to it. I will say, like, funnily enough, the craziest response I've had from a parent for any tech stuff we've done at the school, believe it or not, was from Minecraft. Like when I introduced it at the school first. So strange. So like my previous school, we were running Minecraft, like, every lunch, let's have at it. Had kids actually running the server, and it was amazing. So when I started at this school, I was like, oh well, yeah, let's do that immediately. Like let's get it rocking. So like built a box, had it all up and running. And I think it was about 3 weeks in, because I was just doing it like at lunch times and recess and that sort of thing to begin with, and then it kind of spread across the school and has been used for everything. But it was kind of early days, I suppose, before like it was still kind of looked at as like a game. And people sort of conflate like shoot you in the face game with a create whatever you want game sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we had this parent come in to the principal's office, and she started screaming at the principal saying that she read somewhere that Minecraft is about murdering babies. so instead of her doing a 30-second Google search, she thought she'd run in and start. I was just like, wow, it's amazing.
And Minecraft is so good. Hey, it's like I'm not a creative person, but in there, it's just you're limited to time, how much time you can spend creating or constructing something. So it's so much fun.
Totally. Well, we had actually I think it's ended this year, but we've had a historically a 24/7 server. So I think it was us. Over the years, we've had about 30 or so schools connected to it all over the world, like Japan. We've had New Zealand 24/7. But the 24/7 aspect is the fact that they're in different countries, so they can come and build. Then you see it when you're sort of in, and that got misconstrued as well as to people thinking, what, you have the kids on the computers for 24/7? It's like, no, it's available.
You're whipping them. Build my castle, damn it.
Yeah, perception's strange, but I love Minecraft. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we'll jump on to Rocketshoes and a little bit of IPFS if you're keen.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you Rocketshoes ties in pretty well with the education stuff, so we might just start there. Do you want to just give me the brief little spiel of that as well, so the audience knows?
So basically, Rocketshoes is akin to a learning management system, but not a learning management system. So a learning management system is something like Canvas or Google Classroom, which we use at school, where you basically put on work for students to do, and then they do that, and then they have all their stuff sort of sitting on this server somewhere. Works pretty well. The only issue is when you're moving either between institutions, between schools, or up into higher ed, or from primary school to high school, all that data is sitting on a server somewhere, belong to somebody else. So say you've come along, you've done a whole bunch of great work in primary school on blockchain tech, and they've written it all up and it's sitting on Google Classroom. You go to your high school and they're using Moodle. How do you bring all that stuff with you? At the moment, it's really hard. So basically, you just have to hope and pray that there's a nice person at the school that will zip all that stuff up, export it, give it to you, and then you can, go on your way. But what if you go to 5 different schools, or you go from high school into university and then into corporate? Like corporate uses a lot of LMSs as well. So what we've built is, or building, should I say, still building, is a tool that talks to LMSs and pulls all that stuff into a learning wallet on the back end into something called IPFS, which stands for the InterPlanetary File System, which is my favorite acronym of all time. But basically what that does is give the student complete ownership over their stuff without having to rely on a third party or an institution to allow them to have that, which in the long term, I think is going to be more and more important. Like if you look at all the stuff in Europe with the GDPR stuff, and actually even what's happening here with the anti-encryption bills and stuff, it's going to be more and more relevant for people to be able to own their own data. And that's just one of the tools to do it. And I think starting with students is kind of the way to go.
Yeah, yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I sort of saw Rocketshoes as a way like, are you providing a sort of just a system so people can, so kids, I guess, and or like schools can say like, all right, you upload your assignment onto, this platform here, and it's going to be able to, you'll be able to access this no matter if you're, travel to Japan or you go to Korea, as long as you got an internet connection, you'll be able to get back these documents, which currently sit on, Amazon servers somewhere or, et cetera, et cetera.
100% right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
That's it.
Yeah. So I suppose like it's kind of funny because when I first heard of it, my initial reaction was like, man, that seems unnecessary. Like, why would anyone need like their data back from primary school or high school? Me just thinking of myself, I was like, actually, you know what? It would be kind of useful actually having some of those things. Like, I thankfully still have stuff from primary school, which my dad kept, and it's in this huge filing cabinet at home. Me and my brother have just tons of stuff in there.
Yep.
If when there's more paperless schools, as there should be, hopefully now, 13 years on from when you were first trying it. Obviously, there's going to be needed because, say you move country, like how are you going to get that back? It's hard enough getting stuff when you're physically living next to the school from parents and teachers and things like that versus
that's right
across the whole world. So I can totally see how that can be super useful as well. Have you had much adoption of what you're trying to do?
So we had 3 trials. It's actually interesting, like talking to people for traditional funding versus people in the blockchain space. Like everyone in the blockchain space kind of gets it in terms of like the data aspect. Like, oh yeah, of course. Like you want everyone to be able to own their own data. EDU is kind of like what you said. Like, why would people care about the data? Such a strange dynamic. But yeah, with that, so we've had a number of trials. Obviously, a trial at my school and some universities as well. But ours was funded initially with a DAO, so it's a decentralized autonomous organization that in 2017 or 2018, when the markets tanked, basically put out the funds for our development. So then we had to start sort of going traditional route, which we got. And then COVID hit and they pulled the plug on like all these traditional or all these funds that they were sort of doing for this grant. So we're kind of in limbo a little bit still with that, just in terms of funding. And blockchain and Web3 dev is just so expensive. It's crazy. Like it's because it's so intricate as well. It's more so than just building an app. It's like funny. I was talking to like one of my friends about it, and he's like, "Oh, don't you just like build it and then it's like up on the phone or whatever?" I'm like, no, man. It's years of work goes into it on the back end. So yeah, we're kind of still looking for funding to finish it out. So we've finished 3 milestones. We've got 2 to go. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, we'll move on to IPFS, I guess, as well, because this is sort of me satisfying my curiosity because, well, it's Kieran from the IPFS podcast. If he doesn't know, who does? I guess, like, what is IPFS in a way, and how is it being used at the moment? So, in particular, I know I've heard Netflix is using IPFS, but I could, from like a couple of minutes of research, I couldn't find something easily explaining like what they were doing. So maybe just what is IPFS, and then how is Netflix using it?
Yeah. Oh, it's, to kick off though, I'm probably not the world's biggest IPFS expert. The reason, like the funny story, like the reason I started the podcast, IPFS podcast, was I was literally walking on the beach, like looking for an IPFS podcast, and like sick of listening to like Bitcoin and everything. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start it, and then I can learn more. It's like an excuse to talk to developers and stuff. But I think the tech's awesome, and I think it's really going to revolutionize the way we use the internet, and probably like with other protocols as well. I think it's like doesn't stand On its own, I think it kind of works as a group with Web3. So like if you look at like what's happening with the Handshake blockchain at the moment, where you can actually get decentralized DNS talking to IPFS, I think you're going to see a lot more of interoperable things like that coming out. But going back to the Netflix thing, from what I understand with what they're doing is basically caching. So using IPFS to cache the video. So what that does is basically, say you have a network of computers and you have them all sort of watching whatever, like Squid Games or whatever it is. The legacy method of doing that is what YouTube still kind of does, is where it's like a hub and spoke. So everyone's sort of hitting that one video. And when you have a lot of people doing that at once, it slows right down because there's too many people, like the pipes aren't big enough to get the data out, right? So it actually creates petabytes of data from watching that one clip, people pulling it out over and over and over again. So what IPFS does is breaks up the file into little pieces, spreads it onto the network. So nodes in the network, which can be anything from like your computer to, I think in Australia, they use the Optus network for Netflix. So you have like nodes in the Optus network. So if you notice, if you have an Optus mobile, you get Netflix for free on your phone. Not free subscription, but it doesn't count towards your data because it's all sitting there already.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of like torrents. So if you ever torrented a file before, legally or illegally,
Mostly illegally.
Mostly illegally.
My hand up.
It breaks up the file into little pieces and then reconstructs them for you to watch. But IPFS does that in real time with these hashes, these unique hashes. And what's cool about that is obviously like the speed's much quicker, and you can collect those files up and then see them on your end as quickly as possible. So it finds them like from all over the net and goes, all right, here, boom, here you go. But there's also the ownership side of stuff as well. So the unique hash, which is like the series of numbers and letters that identify something. So it could be a photo of us, or it could be this video or whatever, but that has a unique identifier that is always this. So you can't change it. It's always the same. So that's why it talks to blockchain tech so nicely. They kind of knit together. So it's like this unique identifier, this blockchain is this transaction, and you can do some really cool stuff with that. So that's kind of the other aspect we're doing with Rocketshoes as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense for me because I've spent like a bit of time doing it. So for those who are listening and still struggling, well, listen to the IPFS podcast. You'll get a bit more.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. So you mentioned just torrenting there. So what would be the, I guess, main difference? So I've heard it's something related to torrenting was really good for videos. So, that sparsing, breaking it up, putting it in different little locations, and you don't have to download. I think other people might have experienced this. Like you download a full file, you're at like 95% of the way through, and then your internet connection cuts out or something. And then you can't just restart downloading that file again from where it cut out. You have to re-download the whole file. Whereas IPFS is, with that method, if your internet cuts out halfway through, it's like, okay, you'll just go back to the last little bit that got cut out, and then you can keep going from there.
100%. Even cooler than that, what you can do, and this is something I want to do eventually with Rocketshoes in like a rural school or something, is even if you don't have a persistent internet connection. So what you're talking about there is reliance on persistent internet, which we all are now all the time, right? So if it goes down, everything sort of stops. With IPFS, you can actually run nodes in your network and between networks. So as soon as there is a connection, they all sync up and you can get your data off the nodes locally and even internationally, wherever it happens to be. But it fixes so many things of what's broken with the internet. And I think that's one of the key things, like persistence with internet connectivity. So like a part of it's actually built to deal with latency between us and the moon and eventually us and Mars. And how do you deal with that with HTTP? Like it doesn't work, right? IPFS will work with that because it syncs when there's a link.
Yeah, hence the name interplanetary file system. So, if there are people on Mars, they're not going to have data centers in California, which are, take up, I don't know how big they are, football field sized, I imagine.
Yeah.
They're not going to have that on Mars. So how are they going to get the internet, which obviously they're going to need when they're up there. So yeah,
Exactly.
Very, very cool. What was the difference, I guess, between torrenting and IPFS as well? So it's IPFS, or because I just remember hearing somewhere saying torrenting is really good for videos, but it might not be as applicable for smaller audio files or long PDFs or things like that. Is there a difference between those?
I think that it comes down to the unique identifier I was talking about. So, I mean, there's other aspects as well, but I think that's probably the main difference between the two. So you have that identifier for whatever it is. So whether it's a PDF, whether it's a video, whether it's an audio clip, having that identifier means it can't be broken ever. So like, when you go on a website and there's like a 404 error, this doesn't exist anymore because someone deleted the page. You can't have that with unique identifiers and the way the network works. You can have stuff deleted, so there is still the right for your stuff to be deleted, which took me a long time to understand. When I learned about it in like 2016, I'm like, oh, awesome. It's because what do they refer to in the white paper? It's the permanent web.
Yeah.
But it's not permanent, it's persistent. So you still have the right to delete your own stuff, but it's you that has that right, not a third party. And that's the difference. So like with a torrent, it's great for sharing files or whatever, but it hasn't got that aspect of hashing data to unique identifier. And I think that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this was a question I had, which was it's the right to be forgotten. It's persistent, not permanent. So
yes.
I actually had a chat with a podcaster here in Brisbane who runs a business where he basically helps get stuff deleted from the internet, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. It's like he's on like the side of like less content, which was funny. And in particular, usually stuff like revenge porn. So this will be someone releasing, explicit photos of their ex boyfriend, girlfriend, or them where they've, it's a photo and they've taken whilst drunk in doing something stupid and, perhaps insulting, perhaps, a bit defamatory or something like that. But, should we judge someone based on one action they've taken? Let's ignore that for the moment. But so that how would that work in a way where, I guess, let's say someone has a photo taken of them and then it's put on the internet and in IPFS. Is there a way that they can try and get that taken down or something like where they don't have the ownership of it as well?
Definitely. So there's a whole paper written on that. I forget the ins and outs of it, but they've got mechanisms to be able to actually delete that, delete content that's inappropriate. And that's been a big thing from the get-go. Even with the LBRY group, like LBRY is a blockchain, very, very similar, but specific to video. They had issues with that as well. So they basically have mechanisms for inappropriate content that can be deleted. And that kind of goes to, I forget how it all works, but it kind of goes to a board and then they decide whether stuff gets deleted or not. But I think it's in terms of the inverse of that, and a person putting out stuff that they want to retract, they can definitely do that. But I don't think you're ever going to be able to stop someone taking screenshots and just keeping things. Like Twitter, you know what I mean? Like you delete something on Twitter, someone's taking a screenshot of it, it's still there. So I don't think we'll ever get to that stage where you can just wipe stuff from someone else's computer that they've taken a screenshot of. But it's a step in the right direction, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and there probably needs to be a balance of, imagine if everything that you could delete everything that you've done. Well, there are signs that people need to know. The guy who went to jail for 10 years for molesting kids or sexual misconduct or something, it's it's unfortunate that he did that, but it's also necessary information for other people interacting with him in the future, being like, oh, this might be relevant if he wants to be a teacher
100%.
or something like that. So
yeah,
finding that mix between that persistence and permanency, I guess, is
it's a balance. And like, I like in the early days, sort of reading about it, I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like, didn't think about the negatives at all of like a permanent internet. I was just like, yeah, so you just put everything up and then it's there forever. That's awesome. But yeah, people do bad things as well. It's not all just schoolwork and nice stuff. There's nasty stuff out there as well.
Yeah, I've gotten written down here, like, I'm not really fond of maxis, so people who are like, X will solve everything. What can't IPFS do? Like, what sort of things does it struggle with where it's not a great use case?
I would say Filecoin hasn't really achieved what it was supposed to initially. So Filecoin's like the cryptocurrency attached to IPFS that I had high hopes for. And there's been a number of them. So Storj, STORJ is another one. Where it's a cool concept, like incentivizing people to share their spare hard drive space to the network. So like I was saying before, those nodes in the network, they
require power. They require energy, effort to maintain. Yeah.
Totally. At the moment, it's just people either sort of altruistically running them or who, they're just nerds and are excited about the tech.
Yeah.
But like to incentivize that, I think is really clever. I don't think it's been implemented like as well as it could have been. And maybe it's still early days, but I think that's probably the biggest aspect or the biggest detractor. It's the thing I was most excited about that hasn't quite landed, I think. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So I had written down here, like, how important is Filecoin or that incentive structure to IPFS? Like, is there other ways that it can IPFS work without having those sorts of incentives?
It can, and it has for since its inception, really. But I think for us to be able to run everything on it, like video. So at the moment, like it's like Wikipedia runs on IPFS, and it's a lot of text-based stuff. I think for it to really take off and like have it on everybody's phone, you probably need to have a system that's incentivizing people to do that. Unfortunately, it'd be nicer if everyone was just like, yeah, I'll help with that, but I don't think for the moment that's not gonna happen. So hopefully it plays out. I think in the long run it probably will. Maybe it'll be a competitor built on top of IPFS. Who knows? But I think it's something that sort of needs to happen eventually. And I think like going back, like the Storj blockchain, which is like the sort of precursor to IPFS, a bit different. It was like basically just incentivizing people to be able to have a shared space on the internet. Doesn't do all the cool stuff that IPFS does, but even that had its issues with actually being able to spin up tokens to incentivize people. So it's obviously like, what do they call it? It's proof of space time is obviously a lot harder than just proof of work for whatever reason.
Yeah. I mean, like if you think about it, torrenting back in the day, I'm not sure people were really making money from it. I think it was more based on reputation. So I remember there was this one dude, and how strong reputation is. I think his username was Yiffy or something, and he put up like the best quality torrents for just like 4K. Wasn't even 4K back then, so this was probably like, I'm gonna say like 8+ years ago. 10+ years ago, probably. And he just put up like the best consistent stream. Like you wanted a movie, you'd go to this guy and search through his movies because he had the best ones. And I don't think there was a way that he could have made money from like, I'm really struggling to think of a way that he did. So
just for props.
yeah, pretty much like mad props to Yiffy. He's still like he's still occupying parts of my brain space. So he's done something well.
Is he still going?
I have no idea. I actually haven't torrented anything for a long while. It's probably been.
You kind of don't. Yeah, it's you don't need to now, really, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. That's the other thing. Like, I don't think anyone wanted to be a particular. I don't think. Well, a couple of people want to be pirates, but I think the vast majority of people don't want to be pirates. But it was just getting that cost for the Netflix to
yeah,
appear. So it's like, oh, yeah, it's like $1 for me to get a movie now instead of however much, $20 or whatever it was back in the day, when $20 was
100%.
even more expensive than it is now.
100%, and I think it's really changed the landscape with that as well, with cinema and everything. Like I think it's for the better. I think like in terms of I kind of sucks we haven't been able to go to the cinemas like for the last 2 years, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff just being developed specifically for streaming services. And that probably wouldn't have happened if it was, just torrenting and the legacy sort of Foxtel model or, TV networks. I think it's really really changed. So it's cool.
Yeah, definitely. How you mentioned I can't remember which one it was, Namebase, or you've had the guys from ENS on your podcast as well. So
Yep.
it seems like naming is really important in the IPFS world. Why is that? Why is developing names for stuff so critical?
So they're both taking a different approach to DNS. One's kind of working alongside the current DNS structure, which is
DNS. What does that stand for?
Domain name service. So
Yep.
basically, everything you go now. So like you go to the meremortals.com.
Meremortalspodcast.com. No,
Podcast,
we're not that good.
You're renting that from ICANN at the moment. So you have to pay $10 a year or, $15 a year, whatever it is. But you never own it. You're not allowed to own that. That's belonged to them, and you're renting it off them for the rest of your life. It's a great scam. Like they've been running it for a long time. Like they make billions of dollars. Like it's bananas. But that's changing now with things like Namebase or the Handshake blockchain, and then the ENS
Handshake,
stuff as well.
Yeah, that's it.
So basically, what they've done is decentralize that core structure of naming, and they actually have DNS servers that can replicate that name. So you can actually, instead of typing a .com, you can just type in mere models, and then it pops up magically. Like it's amazing. It's really cool tech. But that mere models, you can actually link now. So it's a decentralized ID or a name that you own 100% and no one can take it off you, linked to IPFS, so a decentralized website, so no one can ever delete it. So if you imagine so at the moment your website is sitting on a box somewhere, probably over in America, like GitHub servers or Amazon servers, whatever it is. If they go down, that's it. If you have a decentralized network running that website, talking to a decentralized DNS server, like it's so cool because it can never be taken down, and you own the rights to it for the rest of your life and after you die.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to create a IPFS website, I guess, how would one go about doing that?
Fleek. So I had those guys on. So cool. So I actually had the kids spinning up some websites on that. So it's fleek.co, I think it is, or it could be .io.
I'll look it up quick.
Yeah. Basically, that talks to, so you have you build a HTML5 website, you publish that to GitHub pages, like most websites are nowadays. On the back end, they talk to that for you, spin it up an IPFS instance. So you have your traditional website, back end talks to IPFS through Fleek, and it's distributed, and they made the process seamless. It's so cool. So you can do that pretty much in an afternoon. Like it doesn't take much to learn. Yeah. So if you need help with it for your website, give us a shout.
I might take you up on that. Hey, because I've I really have problems with and it was fleek.co by the way.
Cool.
And yeah, like when I first heard of, so I come from a mining engineering, so I actually am got a mining engineering degree, and I don't know if you know much about the De Beers company. So they Yeah, yeah. So they basically control the diamond trade, and diamonds are essentially worthless, but because
Yeah.
they hold the storage of it, the supply, I think it's like 90% of the supply of diamonds, they control the market, they control the prices. And so in terms of the like the seven C's, I think is what it is for gems. So it's like cut, clarity, the color, uh, something about abundance as well. Like diamonds aren't really that, like the value in them isn't that much, but they've just been inflated, and because there's a monopoly on it. And yeah,
It's a nice scam.
yeah, when I heard about the what you were saying with the who owns the naming rights, I guess, like you
I
that
can. Yeah,
I
yeah,
can,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Like when I
Yes.
heard you saying that, I was just going,
Bingo. Same
damn
thing.
it.
Yeah, they got us
I'm not
again.
a yeah, yeah, I'm not happy about this.
Yeah, yeah. Now my dad's a jeweler actually.
Oh,
He's
okay,
retired
yeah.
now, but yeah, so I know about the whole history of that.
Yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
amazing, really. Like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Like people, it's like cartoonish supervillain type stuff when you when you hear about people and you're like, they actually pulled it off, like the madmen, they
Yeah,
actually did it.
they did
That's
it.
crazy.
It's a girl's best friend.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. All right, cool. I think that'll do us for the IPFS for the moment. You mind going into some just personal questions? I find you like fascinating
Yeah,
what you're up to, man. Awesome.
sure, sure.
So why education and technology, man? What really, gets you sparked, and why the combination of those two?
Yeah, that's a good question. Suppose I like my background's network engineering, so I went to university for that, studied that at Cisco, the whole thing, um, and kind of just fell into education through that. So Swinburne had a program for placement to put people into jobs, and ended up being a Catholic school that I started with. It was actually a Catholic school that I went to as a in primary school sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's
So it
cool.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, so like running the network, and then it was between them and five other schools. Got interested in that, and that's when we sort of kicked off the paperless school, and then yeah, just kind of went from there. So yeah, it wasn't really planned out. I just um, thought it was exciting, and it's a cool space, I suppose, like an environment to sort of play around with new technology without too much fear of things going awry. It's like it's not a big data center, so something falls over, it doesn't matter, and you can kind of try new things. So I think that's what excites me, like trying new tech when it comes out and seeing if people enjoy using it. And so kind of makes sense to sort of marry those two worlds.
Yeah, for sure. So I read on your like little profiles that you've like your three tenets are innovation, disruption, and lifelong learning. I might even add, I've heard you talk about like having agnostic, you're sort of agnostic to the platforms as well. Where'd you come up with
Yeah.
those? Like, and how important are those
Yeah,
to
agnosticism
applying
for
it to?
sure.
Yeah.
To that. Yeah. I think lifelong learning, I think that should be instilled really in everyone at this stage. Like that's probably one of the things that
Yeah, you don't
you
have a
kind of
choice
have to, right?
nowadays. Like
You don't have a choice.
you
No.
can't just learn mining engineering and you're done. Like even I'm sort of starting to see like you probably needed to have some other skills if you wanted to have work in 20 years time, because the job that I was working at, I don't see that existing in 20 years time.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. So was that a mining job specifically you were doing,
Yeah,
or?
yeah. So I worked out at a mine, doing basically a lot of it was logistics and planning and creating designs. So
Cool.
logistics and planning, it's just you don't even need AI for that really. If you just get a good enough system, it'll be like grab that dirt from there, that thing's broken there. Like you just need someone punching in some numbers, and you'd maybe like a couple of overseers. You wouldn't need whole crews of like whole offices of people deciding. Like I owned a couple of diggers in the sense of like I get to choose where they go at what time, following a like a longer term plan and whatnot. But I was just like looking and thinking, man, I don't see how this can't get automated. Like this isn't hard. This doesn't require too much creativity or unique human attributes. Like this could definitely be done by a robot. So
Interesting.
that's sort of what I was thinking.
Have you looked into crypto mining at all? Like, has that sparked an interest being from that
Yeah,
background?
like it's funny. Like the term mining for me is really changing. So I, obviously from going through uni and then probably like the 3 years I worked in the mines after that, and then a couple of years after that, mining definitely meant one thing, and now it's like starting to change in my mind of like what does mining, like the term mining is definitely changing, which is funny. I've never
100%.
personally looked at it myself. I suppose like my thing is I don't get too involved. The IPFS, I was super keen, interested, learning about it up into a stage, and then with all this blockchain and stuff, like I get to a stage where it's like I just don't want to learn anymore. Like going beyond this, I'm not sure is going to help me. But
Yeah.
then I'd really like to know the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I'll go look at Ethereum for a while and be like, oh, okay, cool. And then like Cardano, and then they'll start talking about concurrency, and I'm like, I'm out. It's gone too much. So yes,
Yeah.
so as in terms of mining, the only thing I'd like, Filecoin sounded cool, like mining via just running up an old laptop or something and letting
Yeah.
that run. Yeah, okay, that would be kind of cool. But getting too much deeper into that, no, I'm all good.
There's a cool project called Monero. That
Monero, yeah,
basically,
yeah.
yeah, that
That's the
uses
privacy one, right?
CPUs, privacy, but they use what I like about it is they use CPUs, so they've kept the algorithm so there's no ASICs, application specific
Yeah,
miners. So you like you see those big warehouses full of miners.
yeah,
They've opted to make it like that's a waste of time even using a GPU. So they've kept it to CPU based. I think that's really clever. So it means like you said, anyone with a laptop or a semi decent CPU can spin it up and get going, sort of thing. So that's and that's kind of like what the BTC protocol, like in the mining aspect, was meant to be initially before the ASICs came out. So it's cool
yeah,
to
for
see at
sure.
least one project still doing it and keeping it decentralized.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a couple of Cardano guys here in Brisbane that I've been chatting with as well. One of them owns a stake pool. And
oh, cool.
yeah, I think the biggest piece of tech you need for that is like a Raspberry Pi. Like it's not too
Yeah.
extreme. Whereas,
Yeah,
yeah, if you
yeah,
want to be a Bitcoin miner, like good luck nowadays. Yeah, there's no
yeah.
chance of
It's
that.
crazy. It's crazy stuff. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so agnosticism. So I think that sort of came from, I suppose, like just being interested in different technology. But I think for thinking about it in like an education context, it's very important. I think like so you walk into a school, and a lot of schools you'll see like just one type of device across the whole school. Much easier for the tech running the show, and probably a bit easier for the teachers, so they don't have to think about like different types of technology, but not good for the kids, I don't think. So what you need from a young age is to be exposed to all types of technology. So whether it's Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Raspberry Pis, everything. So then when you do actually get into the workforce or into another institution that has like a different device, you have that knowledge already. So you're not afraid of new technologies. And I think primary schools, there's so many not doing that. They're just like, here's an iPad and then that's it. And I think they're kind of missing the boat there. And even with that, like with the say Raspberry Pis, for example, we actually had kids like building their own labs from that and like 3D printing their own cases and that sort of thing. And the empowerment that comes out of doing something like that from having the tech there for them to explore, you can't take that away. So I think that's why, and I think even at a for teachers as well, I think it's really important for them, even though they hate it a lot of the time. But the amount of times I've heard, I don't want to have to learn something new within school walls, it would blow your mind. But
The irony, the
yeah, the
irony.
irony is crazy. But I think for them it's important as well, even if they don't want to. So yeah, that's kind of the background for that.
Yeah. Do you struggle personally trying to do that, or is it like for me, for example, I'd say I'm more on the side of I really like routine and structure. That's sort of where I thrive in a way, and this past 6 months, like I've been pushing myself really to be like, all right, try and learn about Hive blockchain today. And then it's like, what's the difference between that and the old Steam blockchain? And, just really forcing myself to be like, don't care about, is this the best way of doing it? Just whip up a wallet and try something out.
Yep.
How do you think about it in that way, or it's like just naturally for you to be like,
nah,
all the things?
Exciting. Yeah. So what's this? And I've got like a group chat of mates, and we kind of just go back and forth like with different stuff that's coming up all the time. So it's not a chore at all. I think it's, for some people it is. In fact, we're starting a new podcast coming up. I think we're going to do the first one at the end of the month, hopefully. But there's 5 of us, and like one of the guys was saying, I haven't got the time to like read all these articles and do this. I'm like, okay. Like for me, it's not a chore. Like if it's a chore, then all right, don't stress. You don't have to do it, sort of thing. Yeah. But I guess different mindsets.
Yeah, for sure. What's that one called, out of interest?
Bitcoin aggregated. So we've got bitcoinaggregated.com. So the concept is basically.
Yeah, I went to that website. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I only launched it like the other day. But basically we want to do like an RSS feed that will keep updating with stuff that we think as a group is relevant. So there's 6 of us. So basically the concept is the same as the Bitcoin blockchain, where you have 6 confirmations. We want to do that, but for stuff related to Bitcoin, and we all have to confirm that this is something worth talking about and sharing. And then that becomes a topic for the podcast, sort of thing.
Yeah, okay.
And the cool thing, we're doing like a roundtable. And I don't think anyone's done this before, but it's basically different perspectives on those topics. So I'm taking the BTC maxi position, even though I'm not. But and then we've got an Ethereum miner, we've got a trader, we've got a fiat maxi, and what are the other 2? So we've got a government dude and another crypto maxi as well. Anyway, different perspectives.
Some sort of like ape, like they just like the meme maxi. If the guy jumps on all the memes,
Doge,
Doge,
or Shiba Inu.
Yeah. That's who's going to actually be running, like doing the files and RSS stuff, the hosting.
Me. Yeah, okay. So I'll be doing that.
All right, 100. Make sure you're getting on the like being podcasting 2.0 compliant and whatnot.
Dude, so I've been battling with my Casa node, as I probably alluded to over the emails, for since the podcast. Like it's just been trying to sync. It's finally synced yesterday or the day before, and now it's crashed. So I'm like, it's like my node is dead. So I'm ditching that. I've actually started building a my node today. So if you go to, I think the website's mynode.com, you actually download the ISO. Actually, I'll see if I can show you. So I'm building it on, I don't know if you can see that. I've got an old school Nintendo.
Yeah.
I'm building it into that.
Oh, that's super cool, man.
Yeah. So that's actually just finishing, like now it should be. So I'll be putting everything through that. So it should be fun.
Nice. Just before I forget as well, make sure you send me your node details, and I'll ask Dave to create a split for us for this episode. So,
yeah, awesome.
Just I'm trying to get more people into the whole podcasting 2.0. I'm like so deep into it, man.
That's awesome.
It's my life.
Have you ditched every other podcasting app except for Breeze?
No, I'm not that far. Like my philosophy is sort of I want anyone, anytime, anywhere to be able to access the mere mortals. So by necessity, I'm gonna play ball with Spotify and YouTube and Apple and all the random, like I put it on like Indian random aggregation services and stuff like that. So that's sort of my philosophy. But Breeze and Fountain FM and Podfriends, I use, like I was saying, I use a lot of them now, and I use them for different purposes as well. But I'm sort of like podcasting 2.0 app podcatcher agnostic. I'll use whatever, and if a new one comes along, like I'll use it as well. So
yeah, it's so cool. Have you tried Sphinx chat?
Yeah, I used a bit of Sphinx. It just I didn't see how it was super different from. I found it more clunky, I guess, is when I was using it. Just some of the things, like I was switching between nodes because I've got like 5 different podcasts, man. So like connecting up different ones and doing things on it was getting tedious.
Clunky. Right. I've only used it just to listen. I was listening to the Kaiser report through there, and what I loved was you could chat with people like while they were listening to it at the same time, and I hadn't seen that done properly before. I thought that was really clever.
That's cool when there's people there. So like, our podcast isn't huge, so no one's going to be there, so it'd be like me talking to an empty room sort of thing. And
I can be there if you want.
yeah. And then the other problem with it was they're sort of going down a bit of a different route. They're not implementing all the new podcasting stuff. So some of the chapters, I don't think update when you're getting to like the certain timestamp mark and things like that. So
right.
Yeah, I'm really just like, I chatted with Oscar Merry from Fountain last night, and yeah, like he's trying to stay on top of everything as much as he can. So I prefer to just stick to those ones at the moment. Like there is a time when you have to tap out and be like, I can't research another crypto coin until I understand this one more and things like that.
Fair enough.
You've traveled a lot, man. You've I saw on your website some links to, I don't know what it was. I've never really seen it before. Like your Google account where you review things, and so like it was funny, like going through some of your reviews of like like random barbershop being like, these guys now accept Bitcoin, and this is back in like 2015. But yeah, you've I saw you were traveling a lot through Europe, some of the Asian countries, Indonesia and whatnot as well. Like you a big traveler?
Yeah, up until bloody COVID. Yeah, love it. Like Indonesia all the time, at least sort of once a year, sometimes twice a year. Kind of been all over the place. America. With the photography, it's pretty cool actually. Like, so I usually bring a 360-degree camera with me, and I got one now you can plug into the bottom of your phone. They're only like $100, and you literally can take 360 photos like wherever you go, upload them straight to Street View. And I've got like 7 million views or something.
Yeah. I saw that. I just went like, what the heck? How did this happen?
I'm like, none of them are like particularly great. It's just me like in front of the camera or whatever. But it's funny, like because I've got so many hits and so many people looking at the photos, you get certified. So I've been certified by Google as a Google photographer from just traveling around taking photos. Like I only did it just because I was like obsessed with 360-degree photos for a while, and like we got one for school, and started taking photos and whatever, and the kids were using it, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. So yeah, just went around sort of doing that and kind of upgraded my cameras as I've gone along, and yeah, it's fun. Hopefully we're allowed to travel again so I can start taking some photos again.
That's it, man. That's it. Any favorite countries from all the places you've been?
Japan, 100%. Yeah, loved it. And I think I saw about 20% of what we had planned to see. It's funny actually, like we had planned to go back in, God, it was like the start of the whole pandemic thing. We're about to pull the trigger and book flights over. Me and one of my friends, and there was a group of others, and we're like, oh, let's just wait a week and see if everyone else is still keen. And then lockdown, that was it.
Yeah.
So like, lucky we didn't do it, but yeah, I miss it. And it was cool. Like the week we went was, I think it was like a few weeks before they'd actually enabled BTC as a currency for their country. So
when was this? What year?
Oh, 2015 or 16, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, so it was like paid for a pod with BTC. I bought like, we went to like this multi-story complex of just like hardware, and they accepted BTC. So I bought like stuff for school. So I got like the controllers and stuff for the kids. And yeah, it was really cool. It was awesome. And like I think like the night we got there, there was a Bitcoin meetup in Tokyo. So like, oh, I dragged my girlfriend there. We went, and it was the guy, what's his name? God, it's gone out of my head. The guy who like started Bcash, Bitcoin Cash. I can't think of his name now. Anyway, yeah, I met him, and he was like explaining the whole thing. So this is like the before the fork, and then came back, and it was sort of on with that. So it was interesting to hear his perspective on that, like from his mouth before he became like the villain of the whole world.
Yeah.
Well, for a lot of
Roger
people.
Ver?
Roger Ver, that's it. Yeah. Nice guy as well. I thought he was really nice. Like, but it was I was just totally ignorant to the block wars or anything. I was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, cool. It was no mention of Bitcoin Cash. It was just like, this is going to be the upgrade for Bitcoin. I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. Came back, and it was just like, this guy's the devil.
Mayhem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild.
That's funny as. Yeah, I Juan was actually meant to travel there on, I think it was like March 27th of 2020. So yeah, I think it was like he was getting prepped, ready to go, and then a couple of days after that was when the all the borders shut and whatnot. So,
sad.
we went there at mid 2019. We all met, me, Juan, and a friend of mine, and yeah, Japan's awesome, man. It was so much fun. Loved it.
Yeah, back in a heartbeat for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Do you read much, man? Do you read many books or anything?
So just read The Sovereign Individual. I've noticed I tend to read more if I'm doing audiobooks, like, walking and stuff. But yeah, that's the one I'm sort of reading at the moment, or just finished up. Yeah. Great book. If you haven't read it, it's excellent.
Is that like Austrian economics sort of stuff? Or?
No, so it's a book. So hard to describe. Basically, it's really prophetic. So it's like written in the 90s, and it talks about everything we've kind of gone through for the last 20 years plus, and they're like on point with everything, including like cryptocurrency and software eating the world, and it's just amazing. You kind of like listen to it or read it, you're like, oh my god, these guys are like geniuses. Like, how did they know it? It's like everyone I speak to, I'm like, read this book. It's amazing. Like, it's pretty dense. Like I still got a mum and dad. I was trying to get them to read it, and mum was like, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it's cool. But yeah, 100% check it out if you have time.
Yeah, who's the author of that? Do you know?
Gosh, 2 authors. I've forgotten their names.
And do you have any favorite books that are of like all time or anything like that?
Probably Lord of the Rings, I reckon. That's probably one of my favorites for sure.
Yep.
James Dale Davidson.
Cool.
There's another author as well. Anyway, yeah, Sovereign Individual.
Yeah, people will find it from that if they want to.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to finish off, man, what are you currently excited about? What's going on that's making you keen to get up in the morning and do?
Well, probably mining actually. So we're getting into mining with a couple of mates, which has been quite fun. Just as a fun sort of side project to do. And the other thing is looking at writing a book as well, specifically on GitHub. So we've already got a bit of a scaffold for a book, or a book that's been semi-published that the principal put together, called the Wooranna Way. But we want to take that, and I want to sort of take it a step further and write about all the stuff that's kind of happened from the perspective of that learning space we created, and now it's sort of destroyed, but like all the stuff that's happened from like moving forward and looking backwards from that, and kind of like what we talked about in this podcast, but sort of stretched out to all the different aspects of that. But writing it specifically as like an open source material and collaborating on GitHub to write that, only because that's how Andreas writes his books, and I thought, and Antonopoulos, and I thought, that's cool, I could do that. But there's a step further I want to take. Like, you can actually now write on the Lightning network, so like write articles, write books, whatever you want, and get paid as people write them. So akin to what's happening with podcasting 2.0. So I want to try and do that with that. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. Still on chapter 1, but this will make me actually do it. So yeah, it should be fun.
Awesome, man. That's super cool. Awesome. That's all I got, man. Is there anything you wanted to ask me or anything you wanted to finish off with? Otherwise, I'll just get people to direct you wherever you want to direct them to.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you end up going to El Salvador when you're over in?
No, I loved if I'd. It's hard to say. Like I think I first bought some Bitcoin in, I'm gonna say like the start of 2019, and I was already past. I was like back down in South America. So if I'd known about Bitcoin Beach, maybe I would have gone. But honestly, man, I probably would have gone there and been like, "What is this stupid like internet crap? Like I don't care." Yeah. I think people just need their introduction to like something they really care about and how that interacts with the blockchain. For me, it was podcasting. So once I heard about Adam Curry and what Dave Jones and him were up to, and like once again when I first heard it, I thought it sounded like a big scam, and then I got into it and was like, oh shit, this is going to change everything.
Penny dropped.
Cool. And then of course I could see like, oh, this can fix this thing, this can do this, this is going to change the world. So yeah, that's if I'd known about it. But I do love South America and Central America, Latin culture. So if I'm ever in the area, 100% I would go back to there and go to there and check it out.
Me too. I'm hanging to go over there and check it out. So
yeah, I've got Breeze on my phone. I'm like, when can I actually start using this in like day-to-day life, other than in my bedroom listening to podcasts?
Yeah, that's right.
Although I did actually send you 1,000 satoshis on your. I saw you had like on your page, so I was like, "Oh,
thanks, man."
see what happens. Awesome. Although, if your notes down, would it have come through at all? So
that's separate. That's all cool. So there was a Twitter service that they actually run. So you sign in with your Twitter account, and so it sends it to my Twitter account. Thanks, man. That's awesome.
No worries, dude.
There's a video on my YouTube you'll probably appreciate from like 2013, 2014. Buying a coffee in St Kilda with a BTC transaction.
Nice.
And it's probably like the first one. It's like thousands of dollars worth of BTC now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I dread to think how much I've lost over the years, but
yeah. I was going to say, like, between you and the kids, you've probably like gained and lost a lot of
probably lost more than gained, I would say, over the years, but whatevs.
It's a fun. It's it's like what you get out of it, and if it weren't for people like you, playing around with it, it's not going to get adopted anyway. So,
that's right. And that was like kind of I was having a conversation yesterday with the Gladstone guys just about that, like the 21 Bitcoin that we got to build that space. Yeah, if you kept it now, it'd be worth whatever. But I think the narrative of students being able to build their own learning space with BTC is way more valuable in the long run than just holding on to some tokens to see if you can do something in the future. So or like the pizza guy.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's sort of my thoughts. Like I'm acquiring cryptocurrency now, and it's not so I can make a profit on them back into fiat. Like, what's the point of buying this if I'm going to reconvert it back into fiat? That makes no sense to me. I want to buy it, hold onto it, and then be able to use it in the future. Like, that's the whole point. So like all the price changes and whatnot. Like, it's I love memes just as much as anyone, and stonks and hodling and all that sort of stuff. Like, hell yeah, it's fun and funny as hell. But no, the real stuff, and like the deeper meaning behind all of it is way bigger than some funny memes.
100%. Well, El Salvador, for example. That's cool, man. Oh, that's such a cool story how you got into it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well done, Dave. God.
Yes. Yeah. Kudos to them. They've made me like sort of like semi-rich and way more educated inadvertently through the power of podcasting. Go podcasting. So speaking of, where do you want to direct people to if they're interested in learning more about Wooranna or IPFS or
probably just my
Rocketshoes?
website. I just link everything there. So kdnolan.com, and I've got everything that I'm doing on there. So
cool.
It's probably the spot to go.
Awesome. Yep, they'll see that in the show notes. And man, thanks so much for your time. And it was a pleasure to have you on.